Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CVMSDC Lunch and Learn Power Hour with our guest from Optus Bank. I'm your host and moderator, VK Fields with the PR Pros team. We have an informative and interactive session planned for you today with Optus Bank President and CEO Dominic Yarton, and Optus Bank board member and president of South Coast Paper, Kenny Lloyd. We certainly hope that you and your loved ones are healthy and safe, and we thank you for joining us this morning. Just a few housekeeping tips. All of our audience participant lines are automatically muted. However, you can submit a question using the question box feature in your GoToWebinar dashboard on your screen. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available for you to review later and to share with your colleagues. You'll be able to view the recording on the CVMSDC website at cvmsdc.org/webinars. Now I'm pleased to introduce our CVMSDC President and CEO, Dominique Milton, to open up today's session. Good morning, Dominique.
Good morning, Valerie. Thank you so much for opening us up. This is a very exciting day. You know, it's so funny when you plant seeds, to see them flourish is just amazing. Because about 2 years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Dominic in Charleston, South Carolina, and we had a community meeting with him down there as they were looking to open a bank branch in Charleston, South Carolina. You know, at that time, I collected 3 of the mugs that he was handing out, and I put them on the shelf in my office with plans to have this session live in our studios in Charlotte, North Carolina. Pivot to today, and we're having to have this session virtually, but I am just so thankful and grateful that we are able to convene together today to share this important information and historical information with each of you today. So it is my pleasure today to introduce the topic, relationship banking and the importance and the value of community banks and how community banks play into relationships and how they help to build wealth. And today I have with me Dominic Yarton, who is the president and CEO of Optus Bank, a U.S. Treasury certified CDFI and an MDI FDIC designated minority depository institution. We're going to talk more about that in a few moments. He spent more than a decade as a senior executive officer at a community development bank, Southern Bank Corp. Most recently, as the executive vice president of Southern Bank Corp, SBI, a holding company for Southern Bank Corp Bank, and CEO of an affiliated lending company, Southern Bank Corp. He is past chair of the CDFI Coalition and a current director of the Community Development Bankers Association. But I want you to know that he is a community servant. That's most important today. He, by running this bank and by you'll hear that their missions align with ours as I get into our mission. But you know, their vision is to ensure that all people have a fair chance to live productive lives. And he has grown this bank tremendously from taking over. It was at $47 million when he took over, and now they're over $100 million in assets. So he is a community servant, and we're going to talk a lot about the importance of community banks as we go through this conversation. So thank you for joining us, Dominic, my namesake. Also, we have Kenny Lloyd with us. These two gentlemen are powerhouses in their industries. Kenny Lloyd is the president of South Coast Paper. He is an MBE in our council, a subscribing MBE in our council. They are based out of Georgia. South Coast Paper is an independently owned paper converting and corrugated packaging company. They are an industry leader. South Coast provides quality paper, converting services, and innovative paper product solutions for contract stationers, business partners, and corporate end users. Previously, Kenny worked for Champion Paper, where he was the first African-American national sales manager in the company's 105-year history. In March of 2000, he co-founded South Coast Paper, growing the company from a single manufacturing facility in Hammond, Louisiana, to a $75 million multi-facility operation with domestic and international capabilities. Lloyd serves on the board of directors of Optus Bank. And this year, they celebrate 20 years of being in business, as Optus Bank now celebrates 100 years next year. So without further ado, I want to welcome these two gentlemen. Thank you for being here, Kenny.
Thank you, Dominic, for having us.
Yes. So let's start out with just the history because we need to understand. Well, before I get into our history, I need to explain our mission because I never like to have a conversation with our audience without explaining what we do as a council. Okay. So just very briefly, we build wealth just like you do, right? Our mission is to expand business opportunities for minority business enterprises, MBEs like South Coast Paper, and create mutually beneficial links between corporate partners and MBEs. Ultimate outcome is to add economic value to the supply chain while increasing economic opportunities in the business community, much like your mission at Optus Bank. Next slide, please, Valerie. We accomplish our mission through 4 pillars. Certification, we're the largest certifying agency in the United States. We have over 12,000 members nationwide through our 23 different affiliates. And so we are the go-to in terms of the standard for certification that says that individual is who they say they are when they're ready to do business with someone in the supply chain. Developmental activities, we hang our hat on development. We have developmental programs to help train our MBEs to go from level 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And that just means they're going from under $1 million to over $50 million, which is where South Coast Paper is right now. Connecting activities, we have many connecting activities. Usually they're face-to-face. We've pivoted to make virtual for this year, but this is a connecting opportunity for you to learn about organizations that are out there to help you, for you to connect with different organizations where you can become a supplier. So connecting activities are huge for our council. And finally, advocacy. Because of the sheer size of our organization, we can advocate for our members. So those are pillars of our work. Valerie, next slide, please. With that, I'm going to turn it over. Next slide, please, Valerie. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dominic, and I'm going to have you share with us the history of the bank, because that's very important. Having a 100-year history starting in 1921 is critical for us to understand the journey that you've taken.
Great.
Dominic?
Well, thank you very much, Dominic. And of course, I love your name. It's such a great name. More people should have it. But really, it's a pleasure to share this time with you. And I want to recognize, Kenny as really the reason I'm here is because it was really Kenny Lloyd and his business partner Paul Mitchell who decided that this institution is too important to not just preserve, but to actually grow. And they invested significantly and sacrificially to get us to this point. And really, we wouldn't be here but for this, and we wouldn't be one of 20 African-American banks, and we certainly wouldn't have the trajectory that we've had over the last few years, but for their business savvy and their investments and their support. So we're truly building this institution on the shoulders of giants of business like Kenny and Paul and others. But the first crew of these, what I would see as really leaders and giants in business, not just African-American business owners, any business owners, they really are running a tremendous enterprise. But the first crew of them came about in 1921 when African-Americans and others really couldn't get access to the banking system. And so they were very courageous to put together a bank in the middle of a time before the FDIC insurance existed. So to put that in perspective, this is before the FDIC was insuring banks. And so for these folks to raise enough money to capitalize a bank, it is really something that I can't even imagine how difficult that was. One of our founders is Modjeska Monteith-Simpkins. So I'll make this connection of why we focus on minority businesses and women-owned businesses today. Is one of our founders was part of the Monteith family, and she was a tremendous civil rights leader. But one of the reasons she came to the bank is she got married and got fired from her teaching job in 1923. So we're fortunate that there was that disparity because this bank at that time was called Victory Savings Bank. Was built with leaders and giants in their own right, like Modjeska Monteith-Simpkins. And to this day, I love to see women-owned businesses that we finance because it feels like it's a full circle. of a business that she helped found. So our story is really not changed much in terms of our mission. If you believe that there's still a disparity in the banking system, then you understand why we exist. If you don't believe that there's a disparity in the banking system,
Absolutely.
just ask the millions of PPP borrowers that tried to get loans at mega banks and see how they were treated. And so one of the things I'll connect with our story today, the last few weeks have been incredibly difficult for hardworking business owners that built their business and are now really at potentially at the doorstep of a complete demise of all their efforts. They've reached out to us. They've been reaching out to us by the hundreds, and they've been reaching out to us from large banks saying, I cannot even get a call back from someone. And so if you ever doubted the need for mission-driven banks and mission-driven institutions, I encourage you to reach out to some of those borrowers and see why we exist.
Yeah, we found that as I was going through the PPP process, and as we've done a national survey with our membership, the majority of our members within MSDC were able to find funding with smaller community banks. I had the same exact experience. You know, I had to apply to 4 different banks. Your bank was one of them. And I will tell you that the experience I had with your bank was the best experience out of all banks that I dealt with. It was personable. I was able to have a conversation and go through my complete loan application. The upfront process was easier. So, you know, the myth is, you know, you sign up with these big banks and then those are going to be, you know, your saviors because they have the majority of money, but you don't necessarily know them, right? And I tell people, Dominic, you know, you need to have a relationship with your banker like you have with your barber or your hairdresser, right? You wouldn't just walk into any barber or hairdresser and just let them take care of your hair, right? And if you don't have those type of relationships, when it comes down to an emergency time like this, right, a lot of people get left out. I was able to explain my application with a representative from your bank, whereas with some other banks, I didn't even have time to have that conversation. So it's so important, the work that you do and having those community relationships. How many loans did you all process?
In the first round, we did about 176, and we were able to fund 114 of them before the money ran out. In the second round, we're well over 500. And we have processed about 300 plus, and we're still continuing to get some. One thing I will say about your experience, I want to recognize Director Lloyd here because he's the one that's been hammering on this experience, that we need to make sure that we're treating all customers as VIPs, that we have the phones, we have the customer service lines open, and folks can talk with a real person. And I will tell you, everyone from our chairman, Paul Mitchell, to the frontline tellers are taking calls, are responding to emails, are getting text messages because of your theme for today is to talk about relationship banking, but there's no way to build a relationship with a robot or with just a website. And so I'd love to hear from Kenny, kind of his perspective on that, because he was the one that really pushed hard early on to make sure that we don't abandon our customers by just shoveling them off into the internet tools and the web-based tools, because a lot of them do need a little help, a little understanding. So I don't know, Kenny, if you want to share your thoughts, I'd love for folks to hear it.
No, sure. As I think one of the most important things that we can do to make sure we support our customer base and potential customers of the banks is to show them that we will respond to their questions and their needs. So I'll tip my hat to, first of all, to Dominic as President and CEO, to our board chairman, Paul Mitchell, and into the team that we have assembled in Columbia, South Carolina, to make sure that any call that comes through, we try and make sure we answer. And we've gotten better as this process has gone along. And it's a commitment. It's something we want to hang our hat on. And as Dominic always shares, being a mission-driven bank, part of our mission is to make sure we service not only our business customers, but our retail customers as well. And we're going to make sure that they're communicated with directly, just as you were, Ms. Milton. So that's the process. We believe that that's the way we'll be able to grow our bank going forward.
That is excellent. So how is Optus different than other banks?
Well, that's a question we get asked. In fact, I'll rephrase it and I'll answer your original question. But one of the questions even today I got: why do we need these mission-driven banks? Why do we need an MDI designation? Why don't we just have banks, right, that serve? And so, if you have tried to get a PPP loan, that answer now is right there in front of you, because understand. But the biggest point of difference and pride in us is that we truly try to be a bank that serves everyone, regardless where they are on their wealth building journey. So whether you come to us as a startup entrepreneur trying to buy your first property or invest in your business, or you have made it, but maybe your business doesn't fit the box of the traditional mega banks, the Wall Street banks, you will get the same treatment. And so what makes us different is when you leave our doors, our core values, we have several core values that we really preach to everyone, but you always have to leave better off than when you came in. And that doesn't mean getting money, getting loans. Sometimes it's getting advice. Sometimes it's just being able to talk to someone. I'll tell you a story. One of these, a couple weeks ago, when the first round of the PPP, I was at the bank, and of course we're telecommuting and rotating people in and out. We're still open for business, but and there was a couple in front of the bank, and one of the ladies was just kind of waiting in front of the bank, and so I came out and let her in, and I mean, she was in tears. She said, I've been trying to get some help, and you guys are helping us with this loan. Can you tell me what the status is? And she didn't know who I was or anything, but I immediately, welcomed her and come have a seat. Her husband joined her, and then a few minutes later, I went and looked her up and said, here's where your loan is, here's what we're doing, here's the timing, and let me get you the lender to talk with. And they were 30-year business owners with 31 employees. That entire life savings and work was in their business, and they were about to have to lay everyone off. And some of these businesses, once you lay people off and close your doors, you may not be able to reopen. And so
that is so true.
And that's so why are we different? We're different because we're here on Saturdays and Sundays. We let people in. People have my cell phone number. People have Kenny's cell phone number. We're trying to be accessible, but more than that, we go above and beyond. Whether this person, I didn't know when I was welcoming her into our lobby on Main Street, whether she had $4.88 in her account or she had 4.8 million in her account. And we have some customers with 4.8 million. That's the
right.
difference.
You didn't prejudge. That's so good. So Director Lloyd, that was me. I was that crying woman calling you up saying, help me. I can't get a loan, and I have to have this PPP loan. Why is there a need for mission-driven banks like Optus, Director Lloyd?
I think there's a mission-driven banks like Optus because of the climate that we're in our country, the growing climate that we're in our country. And to start, you have to have individuals who are truly vested in the bank in order for the mission to be realized. And one of the things that President M. Yorton did not elaborate on, but not only is he our president and CEO, but he's also invested financially into the bank and into the well-being of the bank. Another reason why that's important and why we need it is because small businesses, large businesses, they need to make sure that what they're trying to do within their communities is also aligned with what the banks are trying to do as well. So most people are trying to grow their business profitably. They may need some assistance in getting that done financially. A mission-driven bank will understand that and go above and beyond within regulations to do what they can do to support that business. Also, individuals who are looking for personal loans, whether it's trying to purchase a home or whether it's trying to purchase land, things of that nature, you need a business, a bank that's financially capable of supporting those types of opportunities as well. And when your missions align, as Dominic always says, then your profits and the wealth in that business align, which then attributes itself to the well-being of the bank. And that's what we try and do with regards to Optus.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. And Dominic, who would you say your customers are?
Well, it's changed a lot in the last few days, and that's a good thing. It's been challenging growing in the middle of this pandemic, but historically, our customer base has been very local in Columbia, South Carolina, but back to the branch banking days. And over the last few years, even when I was first engaging Kenny and Paul to kind of explore how do we rebuild this institution, we made a decision that we're going to become a relationship bank, not a branch bank. And what that means is we're not a transaction. We're not focused on transactions. We're focused on adding value. And so we have been shifting our business model to truly build relationships with businesses all over the country. So if you look at our loan portfolio and our breakdown of customers, both on the deposit and loan side, it ranges from your local micro businesses, barber shops, we have an embroidery shop, we have restaurants, we have all kinds of unique kind of small businesses that you would find on Main Street or elsewhere. But we also have large enterprises that simply needed what Kenny was talking about. They needed a little more customized, a little bit more focused on their needs, kind of a relationship. Majority of our customers and majority of our loans and investments we make intentionally are in historically underserved people or places, if you can say that. Mm-hmm. So if you break down our portfolio, and we have 90% of our loans will be either in investments, including our investment portfolio, we try to align it with our values, or in either minority homes, businesses, women-owned businesses, or low-income census tracts. But among those, we also have a U.S. senator, we have a U.S. congressman, we have a mayor, we have a treasurer, and these are all personally banking with us and have significant relationships with us, not just because of our mission, but because they can pick up the phone and call and immediately get someone. And
that's so important.
And they don't have to, exactly.
Yeah.
So
talk about the importance of our business leaders, our major corporations that are in your footprint making investments in your bank. And I'm just going to give you a story that happened in North Carolina with Mechanics and Farmer Bank. We had a major corporate partner who made a significant investment in that bank. It started at $1 million, and then I think it ended up at 5 million or 10 million. It's either 5 or 10 million. They invested in that bank, so the other corporations will follow suit. And then after they made that investment in that bank, they said to all of our MBEs, if you want to do business with that organization, you can then, you're guaranteed that your loan will be covered, okay? So that organization wanting to employ an MBE who needed a loan, they knew that it was backed by the M&F Bank, okay? So I want to encourage our major corporations who are in your footprint to invest in your bank. And I also want to encourage individuals and small business owners to invest in your bank, because when the PPP hit, the first thing that was said was the banks where you have a relationship are going to fund you first, right? And so the bigger banks says, okay, I had a lot of money for our organization sitting at a major bank, but because it wasn't an everyday business account, they didn't look at me as a potential customer for PPP. So I had to go to two of our other banks where we have relationships. So it is so important you start the relationship before you actually need to take a loan, right? You make your small investments. I wanted to take some money out from a local bank here in Charleston, South Carolina. And the first thing they said is, if you put $10,000 in, we'll consider you for a loan. I know it's not supposed to go that way, but the reality is you need to establish that relationship with the bank, and it goes both ways. And in that way, when something like this hits, you have your bank to go to and to call upon. So talk to us. Let's talk about PPP, because I know most of the people listening, they're only concerned about the relationship banking because they learned going through this process as we did how important it is to have a variety of banks in your portfolio. I'll go back to when I was younger. You might not remember this, Dominic, but we used to carry a passbook around, right? You know this, Kenny, right? And so you go to the bank with your passbook and they put it in the computer, and or I don't know what it was, like a typewriter type thing. You printed your balance on it and you walked around. And I had 3 passbooks from 3 different banks when I was a little kid, because my grandmother was like, you have to spread your money around. So I grew up with the mindset that you have to spread your money around. A big bank, a smaller bank, and now we're understanding just that smaller bank needs to be a community bank, because I didn't have that in our corporate portfolio with CVMSDC, right? So we had 3 big banks. So now we know the importance of having that smaller bank. So, but talk to us about the PPP process, because what I'm finding is you have a few groups of people out there. You have more than 51% of our businesses have not been funded yet. They're waiting. Either they haven't found a bank that will process them, or either they don't have their paperwork together to get processed, or they're just waiting for a response from the bank, right? And so we talked earlier before the call started about some of these organizations that don't have their paperwork in order and how they need that hand holding to get their paperwork in order to even qualify for the loan. And then you have that group who just doesn't have a bank, and you all are still available for loans, correct?
Yes.
For PPP.
Yes.
Okay, so talk to us about how you've been hand-holding folks through the process and how you are still available to process loans for people who don't have a lender.
Yeah. Let me address. I'll tie it to your earlier point real quick. One of the points you made about large corporations that have made some investments in minority enterprises, not just because it's the right thing to do, but they understand that in order to have a solid customer base and an ecosystem that they can thrive in, they need to make sure that the prosperity in our country is broad-based. And so they're investing in all kinds of businesses. And with that approach, we have been able to attract significant amount of funding. We could always use more, but one of the reasons we've been able to access it because those business leaders, like our state treasurer or the mayor, or even our U.S. senator, one of them has significant amount of money in our bank. They understand that we are much more aligned with the community. We're accountable to the community. So if they want to support the community, the key question is, where does your money spend the night? Is your money on Wall Street working against you, or is it on Main Street working for you? And it doesn't matter what politics, doesn't matter what background they all understand that if we want to make capitalism work for all people, and we do, we need to make sure that capital is accessible to all people, regardless of your zip code or your privilege or your birth. Not everyone is enlightened and fortunate as you are. You had 3 passbooks. By the way, I had some too, and I grew up in Czechoslovakia, and even there I had little books. Right. So I was fortunate that my grandmother, just like yours, it was my grandmother that would put 100 kronas in a little passbook, and then she said, "This is for you, and you hold on to it." And so I learned about banking from a woman who, probably made $50 a month, in Czechoslovakia, but she taught me about that. So back to this PPP, now it's highlighting why that investment in banks like us now translates into these loans. So I'll give you an example. We have a large bank that does support us. We have several banks that support us. We have one large bank, and I sent a note to their president, and they have a $1.5 million deposit. And I said, and I sent him the loans that we've made. I said, here's what your dollars are doing for your community, for your customer base. And theoretically, they're a competitor bank, right? But he understood that the loans that we're making are too small and too difficult for them. So instead, since they know their business model doesn't allow it to make a $20,000 PPP loan, because you have to do all, and I'll talk about the process. They say, instead, we will support you guys. And they put a significant deposit at a low
Nice.
rate because they wanted to extend their impact through us. And
Right.
so that's
The
what we're
partnership.
doing. Yeah, so what we've done, to give you a quick sense, in the first round, we did about a little over 20 million. And the average size or the median size was about 67,000. That median has dropped to below 15,000 in round two. And in round two, we're well over 20 million in applications. We're processing them as quickly as we can. But we have applications as small as $500. And the largest one we had before was about 2 million or a little less than 2 million. I don't think that we have anything over 800,000 in this round. So you can see that we're now starting to really, in the round two, we're starting to really get the micro businesses, the businesses that truly are the most vulnerable, but didn't have the capacity and the accountants and the support structures that they needed in round one, like the big sophisticated businesses. They got all the big money in round one. So what we're doing in this round is, we have an online portal that you've experienced. We have an entire support team that is taking the applications, reviewing them, reaching out to the customers, if you can believe it, actually calling the customer, saying, hey.
Actually calling, yes.
Actually calling, right? A real phone, right? A real voice, not a robot, saying, hey, you're missing your articles of incorporation. You're missing your 941s or 940s. Or you're missing we need your Schedule C. Can you complete your Schedule C? Oh, by the way, it looks like you have an error in your Schedule C. Can you, go back to your support, fix it? So that's where we're spending 90% of our time, is assisting customers to complete the application so they can get funded.
Right.
So the first step, you're MBE listening, the first step in this process is to go to your portal online and go through it's a very nice portal. It's the easiest portal I went through. You go through the portal, you apply, and then the next step is what, Dominic? You'll hear from somebody?
Yeah, so the next step, you'll get a response back from the system when you submit your forms. Say, thank you for applying, we got your documents. So there's a confirmation, point one. Then our processing team has to verify the amount, make sure the amount is correct based on the SBA guidelines. If the amount is correct, they go ahead and process the application and try to secure the funding through the SBA E-Trans site. Okay, if you have all your documents ready, then the next step, theoretically, and we have had some of these happen, the next step is you're going to get an email. You have been approved. Stay tuned. We'll be sending out documents via DocuSign for you to sign. You get them, you sign them electronically. You could get funded the next day. That's an ideal scenario.
So how long should that process take? Because I'm hearing some people are out there waiting, and waiting is never a good feeling. So how long should this process take?
No more than 10 days, typically from the time that the number was assigned by the SBA, essentially securing the funds. Now that's in an ideal scenario. That means all the documents, your driver's license, your customer obligations that we have as a financial institution has been fulfilled. We know we have all the details. It's been reviewed and reviewed again, because one of the things that we're finding is we see some lenders kind of skipping some of these steps, and we hear from our customers, hey, I applied somewhere else, didn't ask me for any of that. Our point to them is we want to do no harm. We want to make sure that we do no harm. So when the customer comes back for forgiveness and we haven't done all the work on the front end, we could be jeopardizing their success in getting that loan forgiven. So we're not only trying to take care of them to get them the money, we want to make sure that they know what the money is for, they're getting the right amount. So when they come back to us in 7 weeks and say, can you help me with this forgiveness application? We don't have to tell them, oops, we didn't validate this correctly for you, or we didn't have all these documents. So we're taking a little extra time, and we're being maybe a little too conservative on some things, because we want to make sure that our customers are successful down the road, not just on the front end.
So do you help with the forgiveness part? Because a lot of people who have received the money, like we're in that boat now. Now we're going through the whole forgiveness validation and making sure we do the right paperwork and all that. Do you help with that on the back end?
We will. You know, the cycle hasn't started yet because you know, you're counting 8 weeks from.
Okay.
You can apply for forgiveness 7 weeks after the date of disbursement. So we're starting to come up on that from the first round. And then we're assisting customers on the front end. We're advising them, make sure you track every dollar that you receive. Make sure you open a separate account for your payroll, for your mortgage interest or lease payments. So even if you don't have a sophisticated, fancy accountant that's doing it all that for you, we can help you do that on the back end to get that amount forgiven, because it is debt. This is not a grant. Right. This is a loan. And so we want to make sure they're successful.
So, I guess
another benefit of relationship banking. Yes, Kenny, I'm ready to come to you.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I think the other thing that we want to add is, as we're focused in on this customer service piece, not only on the front end with PPP, but also on the back end, we want to make sure, we want to make really, really sure that everyone knows we're trying to handle this individually. So Dominic and our entire staff, which is doing a fantastic job at Optus Bank, we're trying to get to every customer. Have we, maybe missed one here or there? I'm sure we have, but our goal is to make sure that we speak to all of our participating customers, regardless of size of their particular loan that they're trying to ascertain, and know that we're there to service them. So I just want to make sure I added that in. It's a huge endeavor for our bank to do that. And then the other point I want to make is that Dominic harped on quite a bit about the smaller portfolio of loans that we're managing under PPP this time around. But it's also imperative to know that we can and have done larger loans for individual businesses. So we don't want anything to be stereotyped that all we do is smaller loans. And the last point here is that Dominic did a really good job of sharing that we have business as far away as Florida, California, doing Virginia, and these are large type operations and large type opportunities that we're funding through Optus Bank. So yes, we are viewed as an MDI. We are an MDI and proud of it, but we also are we're an institution that supports businesses of all shapes and sizes.
Perfect. Dominic, can you define an MDI, minority depositors? Can you explain that, please?
Yes.
Some of our might not understand that.
Yeah. So the designation is really issued by the regulatory agencies for those institutions that are either minority owned or controlled, and it's a rigorous kind of a screen that they conduct. In our case, the FDIC is our primary regulator at the bank level, and so they essentially determine that because majority of our voting shares are held by African Americans, we're an African American minority depository institution. In the U.S., there's about 200, a little less than 200 MDIs in total. There's about 20 that are designated as African American MDIs, and some of those are maybe not black owned, as you would say. Some folks say that, but they are controlled by African Americans, and they have a same legacy as we have. However, Kenny hit on an important point, which is the fact that we're an MDI doesn't mean that I get this question. In fact, Dominic, at that gathering in Charleston, I got a lot of questions. So, do you all not serve other people? and Kenny can tell you, when we first were talking about going into business together and growing this bank, the board, Paul and Kenny, really challenged me and make sure that we are truly a great community relationship driven bank that happens to have African American owners and shareholders, versus we're an MDI, and that means we're exclusive. And so Kenny's right. We have customers. I mean, we have support from a billionaire in California. We did an affordable housing loan in San Francisco and we did affordable housing loan in Virginia. And so we're finding really aligning all of our dollars with our mission. And it doesn't matter who is the steward of that mission, as long as it meets our mission, we look at it.
So Dominic, let's dispel any myths for our listeners, because there's some history there, with black banks, right? And people lost their money. And we know that that's not the case anymore because you're backed, right? So please explain that piece to dispel that myth that if I put my money in your bank, it could be lost.
Yeah, and it is, it is a sad myth, and clearly it is not the case across the board. But the history of these institutions, a lot of them, we used to have several hundred African American institutions, and they did struggle. And so there's this myth about, your money is not safe. The reality is we have FDIC insurance on unlimited amounts of money. Basically, most institutions, regardless whether MDIs or non-MDIs, can provide almost unlimited FDIC insurance. We have depositors with, like I mentioned, we have one depositor with $9.8 million in deposits with us. And it's all insured. So, that's one point I would make. The other point is,
I just want to get it on the record, because I don't want to have this call and people have that at the back of their mind. So I want to make a small pivot before we go into Q&A.
Okay.
I want to pivot back to you, Director Lloyd, about your business. You started your business and you built it to over $75 million, South Coast Paper, and then you pivoted and restarted this bank. I'll say restarted because it was not doing as well as it could have, and you brought life back into this bank. So talk to us about your journey, but I want you to focus on difficulties you may have had as an MBE starting out and getting funding, because the two biggest problems that our MBEs have are access to capital and scalability, right? And scalability is sometimes impacted by access to capital. So talk to us about that journey. And I'm just going to put one little caveat in here. If my power goes out because a major storm is just coming through here, VK is going to take over. But please share with us your journey.
Okay, real quickly, and thank you for asking about South Coast Paper. My business partner and the managing member of South Coast is Paul Mitchell, and he and I have been working closely together for the past 20 years. Paul Mitchell is also the chairman of the board of Optus Bank. When we started South Coast Paper, I use the medical analogy to describe it, and I do this with everyone. We were on life support when we got started, and our challenges in getting resources initially was pretty difficult. We were fortunate enough to be able to get our initial round of funding, about $3 million, through GE Capital, to be able to finance the equipment that we were purchasing to start our business. It took a while, but we were able to get that done, and we immediately began to lose money. So that's why we were on life support in years 1 and 2. By year 3, we were in intensive care. And still losing, but things looked a little bit better for us. We made some pivots and some changes. And then by year 4, we had a decent room in the hospital. And then by year 5, we were nursed to good health. And thank the Lord, we've been in great shape. We've been financially viable and profitable ever since that time period, and growing. And that's because of the people that we have on our team, the people that work in Columbia, the people that work in our plants in Maplesville, Alabama, Florence, New Jersey, and in Mexico City, Mexico, and our sales team that's across the country that made things happen for South Coast Paper. So the way that we got into the banking side was Paul Mitchell had been a part of the bank of South Carolina Community Bank. By now had changed from Victory Savings, and was a board member. He started to see things happening at the financial collapse. I call it the Great Recession in 2007, 2008, and things started to go negative and sour with South Carolina Community Bank. And I will tell you that because of his investments, his vision that he looked at that particular time period around 2010, he started to say, look, we got to save this thing. And so he personally put his financial strength behind it, kept those funds going into the bank. And then eventually I got the bug and said, hey, look, let's make this work. And so I started putting some, I call it some pennies into the bank as well. And then I guess the best thing that happened as we tried to retool, reorganize, restaff the bank from an executive management position was meeting Dominic on the West Coast in Los Angeles. We got a chance to know one another, spend some time in Arkansas together, and then Dominic not only bought into what we were trying to do and was ready to lead it and take it into the right direction, but also invested, as I said earlier, into the bank. So that's the pivot, that's the shift. With regards to South Coast, we continue to grow. We continue to expand the product offerings that we have. We're now not only doing paper and converting it and selling it, but we're also involved very heavily now on the corrugated side as well, where we're promoting and selling corrugated boxes throughout the country and working with some major customers from a distribution and a direct standpoint as well. So the two are sort of intertwined. The team that sort of is engaged in all of the aspects of South Coast Paper and also Optus Bank starts with my business partner, Paul Mitchell, and Dominic M. Yarton's leadership with the bank, and myself. And then also at South Coast, we've been very blessed to be able to get the company to a point where we know with this pandemic we're dealing with, we're going to have to make some moves, but I think we're in a pretty good seat to be able to grow the business beyond 2020.
Well, excellent. Thank you for taking up that mantle, and thank you for serving, as I said, serving in the community, because with the work that you do is helping to grow wealth by giving people opportunities that would not have had those opportunities before. So thank you for your vision. The bank has more than doubled under Dominic's leadership, and so thank you for investing back in our communities. And again, I put that plea out there for all of our listeners to make an investment in the bank with deposits, and as well as our corporate partners. I will be opening up an account with your bank as well. Okay.
Well, we thank you, Dominic, and I also want to make sure that I say that the work that you're doing with the council is extremely important, and every corporation and in this region and every MBE, MWBE should take advantage of the resources that you and the council bring to bear.
Thank you so much. So with that, I'm going to open it up to VK. VK, are there any questions from the field?
We just want to remind our listeners that you can use the questions feature box on your GoToWebinar dashboard to submit any additional questions you may have. The first question is, what is the best entry point to begin building a successful banking relationship? Who is it that I need to reach out to start that process?
The easiest way, yeah, so the easiest way is to email us or call us. We're responding within minutes or a couple hours to all emails. To one email is kenny@optus.bank, and it's not Kenny Lloyd. Director Lloyd works hard, but he doesn't answer every email that we send him from customer service. But
I was getting scared for a minute.
Yeah, we do have so the way we're organized, we have a relationship banking group. Like I mentioned, we made a shift from a transactional bank to a relationship bank. So we have a relationship banking group that our vice president, Kenny Robinson, runs. And Kenny and his team are responding daily, weekly, and on the weekends and nights and weekends to these, or call our, we can call our number, but the best way is go to optus.bank. You can click the email link. Someone's going to get back to you and find out how we can best assist you, and then assign you to the right person, whether it's a loan officer for loans, or it's a relationship banker, relationship manager, or universal banker for your deposit or transaction needs.
So that's Kenny.Robinson?
It's Kenny@optus.bank.
Okay. Now I've dealt with Kenny, and I had to open up an account online, and some other banks would not let me open an account online. I had to don a mask and go in to open up an account, but Kenny was ready to open up a business account for me online. Everything was going to be virtual. So, I encourage, I applaud you for having those virtual capabilities. And again, I'll be opening my account. Any other questions, VK?
Yes. The next question is, are you participating in the VA Vet First program?
I'm not familiar with that program, so I assume we're not.
Specifically for loans for veteran-owned businesses.
We're not. We are participating in the various mortgage programs that serve veterans and first-time home buyers and others. But I'm not familiar with the program. I'll have to look into it.
Okay, thank you. Another question coming in. Let's see. How do I learn more about becoming a strategic partner in your customer service area?
I'd love to hear more about that. And again, please reach out to me or Kenny at Optus.bank, and would welcome that conversation.
Okay. Next question is, what is or is there a minimum deposit required, and how do I open a business account with Optus Bank?
Great question. So there's no minimum required. If you want to avoid any monthly service charges, you have to have at least $100 in your personal account or $1,000 in your business account. But even if you don't have that, the monthly service charges are very low. You can email either support@optus.bank or email Kenny at optus.bank. We can open it up. Everything can be done electronically, either through our online application portal, or it could be done by submitting documents securely to our site. And then we have a standard kind of a package that we quickly send out to make that process super easy, as Dominique experienced. We try to make it so easy that business owners don't have to go even log in somewhere to start the process. They can simply attach a few documents and someone's going to follow up with them. We also offer digital signatures on all of our documents. So they're going to get a DocuSign package. They don't even have to scan it. Literally, they pull it up on their computer, complete it, sign it, click submit. Don't even have to email it back.
Hey, thank
So
you. There was
Kenny
a
at
follow-up.
Go ahead, BK.
There was a follow-up to the previous question about the veterans program. The comment is the Vets First program is a 100% set aside for VA certified veteran-owned businesses. So this may be an opportunity may exist for those types of businesses to use Optus Bank.
Great idea. Thank you very much. I just noted it and we'll follow up on it.
Okay, and we can certainly connect you all with the individual who is providing that information.
That'd be great. Please do.
Good.
Okay, great.
Dominique, that was the last question and comment.
Okay, so support@optusbank.com.
At Optus.bank.
Is that correct?
At Optus.bank or Kenny at Optus.bank.
Kenny at Optus.bank.
That's the easiest one. Either one will work.
Can't hear you.
Either one of those will work.
Okay, all righty. We will put that information in our chat. BK, can you capture that, please? Put that in our chat, and we'll send this webinar will be made available to all of our listeners. It will be posted on our website as well. Gentlemen, any closing comments?
I'll start and I'll let Dominic end it up.
Director Lloyd?
Yes, can you hear me very well?
I can't hear you.
How about you?
Go ahead, Kenny. You're coming through fine.
Okay, well, look, what we want to say is, well, first of all, thank you, Dominic, for having us. Again, hats off to all the work you're doing with the council. We appreciate your service and your time and this opportunity to share not only our vision at Optus Bank, but also share what this means to us to be able to communicate with individuals about working with our bank and our team. And then the other point that I wanted to drive home here is the person, hopefully we have direct communications with the individual that talked about VA First. We want to get directly back to them and respond to their request for more detail from our bank about that opportunity. So thank you, and we look forward to working with your constituents as we go forward.
Thank you. I have one more question for you, Director Lloyd. Where do you see the bank going? What is your vision for the bank?
Well, I mean, I see that with the leadership we have, with the people like Ms. Deborah Dawson and Reggie Weber and Dominic Imyorton, and just a host of people we have, and Kenny Robinson and others that we have at the bank, I think the future is very bright. I see our bank growing tremendously over the next 3 to 5 years. Today, I know we're surpassed 100 million in assets, and I see us being somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 600 million in assets within the next 2 years. I also see our bank expanding our platform of services. We've invested in systems that will allow us to reach a broader audience in today's marketplace. So I see our portfolio of customers, as Dominic talked about, being a lot broader and also a lot varied with respect to the socioeconomic background that they have. So I think we're in a very good position to service a multitude of clients across the country.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us and your comments. Dominic, any closing remarks and your vision for the future? It can't quite differ too much from cities, right? But
we are very much on the same page, and so we're a small group, small board, and we're aligned almost perfectly on our vision. What I would say is my parting words would be, we want to use the bank as a wealth building ministry. So we talk about our bank, but the way I describe it, it's truly a wealth building ministry that happens to have a bank. And we need to run it in a way that's sustainable, that's scalable, but that intentionally builds wealth for people. And so I want your audience to know that if they want to live their values, if they believe what we believe, that every person should have access to wealth building opportunities, we ask them to align their money with those values. That we'd love for them to bank with us, but there are other minority banks, other great community development banks. Use them to extend your values and provide opportunities to others with every dollar you spend. And I know that is your mission, Dominic. I know you promote that very effectively. And so we are just delighted to be able to join you in that effort.
Sounds good. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Nothing gives me more pleasure than to see our MBEs growing from level 1, under $1 million, to level 2, up to 10 million, level 3 and level 4, over 50 million. But then to see an MBE become a corporate partner, there's nothing better, right? So that you've gone beyond, right, your development as an MBE, and now you're there to serve as a corporate partner. That's huge. And so we welcome you as you take that journey to become a corporate partner with CVMSDC. I hope that all of our listeners understand the value of making deposits at your bank. All of our corporate partners make investments with you. And thank you again for your service to the community. As you said, Dominic, it's a ministry to build wealth. So I thank you, because I like to look at what we do as building wealth. For every dollar that's invested in our MBEs and our footprint, we return $1.72 back into the economy based on the trickle-down effect. And so it's so important for us to be very intentional in where we put our money, intentional in the relationships that we build, so that we can grow our economies together. I thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. Much success, and I look forward to celebrating 100 years with you next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, that's our time for today. I'd like to thank Dominique Milton, Kenny Lloyd, and Dominic M. Yarton, and all of you for joining us today. We hope you have a great day. Be well and stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.